Beauty seekers, you put it on to protect yourself, but what if some of what's in that bottle soaks into your blood, turns up in breast milk, and hides behind a word the law lets companies keep secret? Today, the founder of an app that reads sunscreen labels and all kinds of labels for a living shows you exactly what's really in your sunscreen. Andrea Dahr, founder of Switch Natural, takes no money from any brand. Her only loyalty is to the person holding the bottle, you and me. Today, we'll review actual sunscreen ingredients, what gets into our bodies, what's hidden on the label, and how to know in seconds if your sunscreen is actually even protecting you from the sun. Andrea, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much does seeing the ingredient oxybenzone encourage you to buy it?
I'm going to say that's a 0. That's a huge red flag. And I'll tell you, it's even banned in Hawaii. You can't even buy a sunscreen with it. So they've actually taken the step to ban it completely. But oxybenzone is one of those chemical sunscreens that readily absorbs into your bloodstream. It has all kinds of environmental hazards, but it also is an endocrine disruptor as well. So it's definitely a no for me.
Okay. How could it be banned? And yet still it's okay to have as an ingredient in sunscreen? How can that happen?
It's really interesting that you say that, because it seems that every different jurisdiction, different countries all have their own rules when it comes to sunscreen. And so it leaves the consumer very confused. But there's a lot of research out there showing that these sunscreen ingredients might not be good for us. Okay, so even the FDA did a study in 2020 that proved that these chemical sunscreens absorb into the bloodstream. They can last in your bloodstream from up to 21 days, and they could potentially be harmful. The FDA said we need more studies to show that these are not harmful, and those studies really haven't been done. I think that's a red flag right there. And then there's also so many studies showing that these can interact with our bodies in negative ways, and we just need more they say that we need more research, but really the research is there. And I think that there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and there's a lot of push to get these sunscreens on the market. If you look at what's actually sold, the majority of what is sold is sunscreen ingredients that are not considered generally recognized as safe and effective by the FDA. The majority are these chemical sunscreens that are technically legal, but they're not considered safe and effective.
It's so true. Since I started researching for this project, I spend a lot of time in the sunscreen aisles now, and just knowing the few chemicals that should not be in our bodies, they're in, almost all of them. I honestly can't even buy one off the shelves typically.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Most of what's on the shelf is not going to be a mineral sunscreen, which is the ones that I recommend people buying. They're ones that sit on top of the skin. They don't absorb, and they're not going to be found in things like breast milk and urine and your blood. They don't absorb readily. And so those are really the safe options that we have. And I think that a lot of people believe that these sunscreens are going to look chalky. They're going to feel terrible, but sunscreen formulation has come a really long way, and there's such great options that, to me, it's just, there's no reason to buy the chemical ones. And brands have it, they're cheaper, and they're just mass produced. So for example, these manufacturing companies have tested bottles ready to go. A brand wants to sell a sunscreen, it's ready to go. They slap their label on it and it goes on the shelf. And so it's just easy and cheap for companies to continue to make and sell them this way. They think that consumers will buy them because they go on completely clear. And it's just a mismatch from what we need and what we're told we need. And I don't say don't wear sunscreen. You absolutely should be wearing sunscreen, but there are absolutely better options on the shelf, and people just need to know which ones to choose. And so I'm really passionate about getting that information out there.
I'm glad you are, because now I'm only becoming more aware. I have a little bit of awareness, but really I look at, SPF, reef safe. It's 80. This must be good. And don't take the time to look at the ingredients.
And I think that's a big one too, is people just go directly for the number, for the highest SPF. That's not really what you want. In fact, if you go above SPF 30, you're getting a tiny bit more of protection, but it's not enough to move the needle. But you're also getting to get that high SPF, they're adding chemical UV filters to make it that high. And those are only protecting against UVB rays, not UVA. UVAs are the ones that go deeper and cause, they're also, cause all the problems, but UVB are the ones you can think about it this way that protect from burn. So if you're like always reaching for those high ones, you're getting the extra chemicals that you don't necessarily want that are safe, but you're just getting a tiny bit more. And when people put SPF 100 or 80 or whatever, those high SPF numbers in their body, they think that they can go longer without reapplying. That's not true. You really just need to stick to the trusted SPF 30 with the safest ingredients, reapply, use safe sunscreen practices. I mean, wear a hat. Don't go spend the peak hours in the sun, in the water without reapplying. It's a lot of common sense stuff there, that those basics that people get swayed with these high SPFs. Oh, I can just go bake now. No.
Yeah, exactly. And that's been my understanding for years. I want to dig a little bit deeper into oxybenzone so our community can really understand. When you say endocrine disruptor, what does that mean?
So it can mess with your hormones in a bunch of different ways. So anything from reproductive and development, there's also, it can mess with your metabolism. So your hormones control all of our bodily systems, right? So if any of these things get thrown off, it can increase your risk for adverse health effects down the road. So it's one of those things where it's not like something that you put on your skin that you're going to get an immediate reaction, right? It's just adding to the exposure to toxic ingredients that increases your risk of harm over the long period. And we just don't know where we stand at any given moment. So my mind is, why not reduce those risks where we can? It's so easy. There's things that are completely out of our control at times that we can avoid in terms of exposures in the environment. Sunscreen is absolutely one where we can get a better option. And the oxybenzone is the one, I'll just add this too. Oxybenzone is the one that was found to last in the bloodstream for up to 21 days. So 21 days after a normal application, it can still be detected in your body, which is just wild to me.
Exactly. And disrupting hormones. So maybe give us a couple examples.
Yeah, sure. And so another thing that I was explaining recently is, there's particular periods when you want to make sure your hormones, I mean, always, but so infancy, childhood development, also menopause. This is wild, but like perimenopause and menopausal symptoms can be worsened because of hormone disruptors. So I think night sweats were tied to some hormone disruptors. Those symptoms being worse for people that have high amounts of hormone disruptors in their system. So it really affects all aspects of our lives.
Okay. That is amazing to know, because it's, I think sometimes we think, I'm on vacation, I'm just going to go grab something. I didn't prep, like I would bring my makeup or whatever else, my curling iron. And part of the thought here is, from my perspective, is really prep, know what sunscreens are good for you, protect you, not bad for you, and prep and bring that with you. So you don't have to run. Yes.
I love that, because it is difficult to find them in the stores. And so I bring it, just like you're saying, like a hair dryer or a curling iron, something that you would regularly bring and pack with you. I always pack sunscreen, because it is one of those ones that is more difficult to find in just like your average store. Though I think if sometimes I do, every time I travel, I use my app and I scan and try to find a clean option, but I always pack sunscreen. And I think it's just getting in the habit. And I like to share too, a lot of times when I travel, it's like, these are the things that I'm bringing, and just make it easier. And it becomes part of your routine, to pack your clean stuff. So you're always in the clear.
Exactly. That's the goal, hopefully, with this, that we can educate our beauty community on there are chemicals, minerals. Which one's good? Which one's bad?
Okay. So chemical sunscreens are the class that we know absorb into the bloodstream. Referred to as chemical sunscreen. It's just sort of the name that they're given. We're all of these ingredients are technically chemicals, but chemical sunscreens are like oxybenzone, octocrylene, octinoxate, homosalate, avobenzone. If you see any of these, when you flip a sunscreen over, there's going to be two sections. So the top is going to say active ingredients, and those are the ones that have to be like technically allowed legally as an active ingredient, because in the US, sunscreen is treated as a drug. So they have to list those active ingredients separate. So that's the top. So the only thing I tell people, look for zinc oxide in there. And if you see a whole bunch of other words, those are likely chemical. Those are going to be chemical sunscreens, and you want to skip it. And then there's a second section, and then you'll see, okay, so you'll see active, and then you'll see all these warnings, about wearing it a certain amount of time in the sun and sunburn and all these warnings. If it's an aerosol sunscreen, you might see warnings about not inhaling it, which that's a whole other issue. And then if you go to the bottom, there's inactive ingredients, and those are things like preservatives or skin conditioners or fragrances that are added that are not necessarily those sun protection ingredients, but they're also a big part of the formula that you need to look at and be aware that there could be harmful ingredients there. But for sunscreen, that big one that's going to tip you off right away is that active ingredient section. If you see anything other than like zinc oxide, which is the mineral filter that I recommend, then I would say skip it.
Okay. And even that heading, inactive ingredients, it's misleading to me. It's like, well, these are just there to kind of fill it in, but it's really, we need to pay attention.
Absolutely. Yes, you're so right. And I think there's this assumption that when you put something on your skin is a barrier and it's going to keep out. Well, that couldn't be farther from the truth. Our skin does absorb. There are some things that don't get in, but a lot gets in. And I mean, that's why things like, hormone patches work, because our skin absorbs. And actually in those inactive ingredient section, there's a lot of times you'll see ingredients called PEGs, polyethylene glycols. Those are actually penetration enhancers. So they help ingredients get into the skin. So if you've got a product that has harmful ingredients and you've got PEGs, double duty there. So you really want to avoid those too.
Wow. Okay. We're going to have to talk about your app. Beauty Seekers, one application. That's all it takes for some sunscreen chemicals to show up in your blood and still be there up to 3 weeks later. According to a 2020 study in the medical journal JAMA, several common sunscreen ingredients absorb straight through your skin. Today, Andrea Dahr, founder of Switch Natural, reviews sunscreen ingredients with us and shows us what they may do once they're inside you. Andrea, welcome to Beauty Seek.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a topic I'm very passionate about and I'm happy to share.
I'm happy that you're here. We're all happy that you're here. Let's talk about Switch Natural. Can you share with us what that is?
So Switch Natural is the app that I built to help my community figure out what all of these ingredients mean. I mean, I am a beauty lover. I love products. I love makeup. But when I started looking at what was inside, I realized I didn't understand what any of the words on the back meant. Sure, the front says all these great things, but if you look at what's actually inside, these chemical names, most people don't know. So I started researching, let's say, back in 2014, when I was pregnant with my twins. So I've been researching ingredients for a long time. I've kept track of what I've learned. I'm just a curious person and I want to know what I'm using and I want to know if it's safe or not. I'm trying to be health conscious and I don't want to totally counteract all these steps I'm taking to be healthy by just applying chemicals that are dangerous to my skin every single day. And so what my app will do is it scans the ingredients, it flags any that are potentially harmful. It'll tell you exactly why. It's these descriptions that I've written. And I link you directly to the research so that you can see exactly why this ingredient is being flagged. I think being educated is so important. There are people that say, Andrea, just tell me what to avoid. I'm just going to do it. And they use the app and they just blow through and switch products and they're on their way. Then there's people that really need to get it, need to understand, and then it really sticks. And so I have to have that information in there. I'm constantly researching ingredients. I'm constantly updating the app as new ingredient research comes out so that it's reflected in real time. If you're using it today and I add an ingredient today, it's going to show up right away.
Thank you. Thank you for developing this. I was on the app and I couldn't believe the detail of and the true research. That's not just you've done the research, but it's sourced so well. Here's a study and it actually indicates that, this is an endocrine disruptor as an example.
Yeah, absolutely. I want people to know exactly. I don't want to fearmonger, but I think that we need to know. And because we don't know what these chemicals mean, it's really not true transparency. You can't actively make a choice if you don't know what something means. So I just want to lay it out there and then someone can make the choice to use the product or not. I'm not going to give it a rating scale. I'm just going to say, this is what you need to know. And you can take that information and make the decision that's right for you at any given time. We're all on our own path.
Exactly. Yes. What's right for the individual. That's what we're all about here at Beauty Seek. And that's why I'm so excited to be talking to you today.
Awesome.
Okay. You're not going to rate, but I'm going to ask you to rate 1 to 10. How much do you want octinoxate to stay out of your shopping cart?
Out. That's one that absorbs into the bloodstream. It's a chemical UV filter. It's associated with endocrine disruption, and it's just not worth it because we have better options.
What is it? Why is it in there in the first place? I mean, what do sunscreen manufacturers think that it's doing? Why do they put it in there?
Okay, so the sunscreens, these have been developed for a long time, and chemical sunscreens came about because at the time the zinc oxide was very clunky and big particles that would look, that white chalky look. So manufacturers came out with these chemical sunscreens which go on smoother, clear, and so they were really trying to sell to the consumer like this really better version that's going to protect your skin but also feel good. And we sort of lost the plot along the way because they started to prioritize that aesthetic over the actual reason that we're wearing it in the first place, which is to protect our skin and be safe. So we don't want to be introducing chemicals that could be harmful. It's counteracting what we're trying to do, which is to protect our skin. And so I think that we sort of got lost along that journey. And thankfully, along the way, the zinc oxide formulation has gotten so much better. They've learned how to process it and smooth it out in a way that it doesn't come across so white. And the cool thing too is they're now adding pigment to sunscreens, which I think is brilliant because the pigment it balances the whiteness, but it also protects from blue light. We spend so much time in front of our computers and our screens that blue light protection is great. And that's what these iron oxides that are added give it like a skin color, adds protection in that way too. And the other great thing about zinc oxide is it protects against UVA, which is the longer UV rays, and UVB, which is the shorter ones. The UVB you think of with burning, they cause burning. UVA don't cause the burning, but they still cause damage, skin damage and cancer risk. So we want to protect from both. And a lot of the chemical UV filters only protect against UVB, with the exception of avobenzone is UVA, but it has to be paired with something else and it's very unstable. So there's really a lot wrong with these chemical UV filters, and we have a safer option that has been used for decades. So why not use the safer option?
And, I was speaking with Mrs. Sunscreen, which is how we met, the inventor, developer, CEO of Daily Shade. And so her sunscreen, from my perspective, seems completely clean. But where would a beauty seeker like me go? Because I'm going into the convenience stores to try to pick up some sunscreen quick. Be prepared, I think is my new mantra, especially for
but
sunscreen.
Sometimes, right.
But where do you go? Is it just online to find special manufacturers?
So online, and I love that you mentioned Daily Shade because that is such a great option. I know it's for kids too, Babe Shade, but it works for me, for my kids. It is tinted, so it doesn't go on white. I love it, and it absolutely is clean. So really, it just takes that extra step of looking at the actual ingredients on the back, the inactive and the active ingredients. Sometimes you can find them in store. If you're in a pinch, you might find a good one. But that's where my app really does come in handy for situations like that. And even once you scan a bunch of labels, you actually might find one. What's interesting, sometimes brands will have a clean version and a not clean version. They'll look very similar from the same brand, but I scan them and one is good and one isn't. I actually shared, I think, 6 or 7 examples recently of brands that I found that offer one good one and one bad one. So you always have to scan the individual product. Don't just say this brand's clean, this brand's not, because sometimes a brand that sells a lot of not clean products might make one that's actually pretty good. So it's worth flipping it over and taking a look. And then I would say, in terms of where to buy, there's a lot of clean beauty retailers now that offer some great options. And even some clean beauty brands now sell their products on Amazon. So if you are in a pinch or you're somewhere where you can get that 2-day shipping, sometimes that's a great option too.
Oh, totally. So what would we search for on Amazon? Clean sunscreen?
Clean sunscreen. And then you want to scroll down and look, or you can just do a Control F. So look to find the full ingredient list, pop it up on your screen. You can take a picture of it with my app on your phone and then scan it right there. So you don't actually have to be in the store to use it.
Okay. I love that. Okay. That's fantastic because standing in the sunscreen aisle at any kind of store, I'm going
to hurt my eyes trying to read it. It's so minuscule, the text.
Yeah. Yeah, usually I don't have my glasses with me. And then I'm just like, I'm deflated after about the fifth one that I look at. So, okay, that is great instruction. 1 to 10, slow to fast scale. If you picked up a sunscreen with homosalate in it, how fast would you set it back down?
I would set it right back down. So, like oxybenzone, homosalate was one of the chemical sunscreens that lasts in your body up to 21 days. So, that one readily absorbs. It has hormone disruption potential, not one I would use.
Okay. So, are there a top 3 chemical ingredients that you would say, avoid these? If you have to do the others, so be it. Like there's top,
so definitely avoid oxybenzone. The other one that I want to point out that we didn't mention is octocrylene. So octocrylene is problematic not only because it's a chemical UV filter, but also because it degrades into another chemical that's actually a carcinogen. And in fact, these were tested. Every single one had that problem. So octocrylene across the board, you want to avoid. And a lot of times it's mixed in with other chemical UV filters. But if you could remember oxybenzone, octocrylene. And then the third thing I would say is avoid aerosol sunscreens. I know they seem so convenient, but aerosols are so bad for us. They're powered with propane, butane, and isobutane, which are propellants that are flammable. You'll see warnings on the back of them, like not to spray them. You definitely don't want to inhale them. So just steer clear of the aerosols.
Okay, super guilty. I can't even tell you how many times I've picked up an aerosol. And then when I spray it, it ends up to be my perception of what zinc is, or I really probably didn't even relate it to zinc. Then I get white spray all over me. And so that's been my experience. And I just have to be smarter about doing that research, like you said, and really taking a look at the ingredients. And how do you find something that isn't that thick zinc? Like, how do you know before you purchase it?
So that's a great question because I feel like the marketing can be confusing. You know, it says it's lightweight. I would ask a friend who's used it to be honest with you, or if you follow somebody or talk to somebody on a regular basis that tries a lot of sunscreen. I'm always sharing details about the sunscreens that I try so people can really understand if it's going to be right for you or not. Because the truth is with skincare, we're all so individual. Like my skin leans on the drier side. So the sunscreens that I go for are going to be more oily, more rich. Whereas somebody with oily skin, like no way they're going to want an oily sunscreen. They're going to want something with a matte finish. So there's new, you do kind of have to find your match. And so it could take testing them out. There's some that are way thinner consistency. There's some that are thicker consistency. Some people want the thick consistency because truthfully, zinc oxide can be really calming. Like it's what's in diaper cream. It's what they've used in diaper cream for decades. And I think there's this sort of, I haven't actually seen this, but I've heard there's a trend where people will slather diaper cream on their face at night to calm it down. And it's that zinc oxide that's really calming. And that was actually something that led me to zinc oxide a long, long time ago. So way before. So I can remember it was probably like my late teens is I realized that chemical sunscreens would irritate my skin. My skin would feel itchy and just uncomfortable because they can be more irritating. Zinc oxide on the opposite side tends to be more calming for people. So that's just another tip too.
You knew that in your teens?
I was really, it's funny. My dad was always telling me, I know you're in the sun, you need to wear sunscreen. He's an internist and he knew that sun cancer was a big risk. He was always telling me about sunscreen. So I tried a lot of sunscreens and I just noticed that those ones that claim to go on clear, those are the ones that burn my face. And so I steered away from those.
Wow. Okay, great.
I can't give myself too much credit. I got to give it to him and just sort of trial and error. I wasn't necessarily I didn't know sunscreen was dangerous back then, but it's just an anecdotal evidence.
That's great, especially for a dad. I don't know that my dad really counseled me to put on sunscreen. My mom probably, but I love that.
It's funny.
Butyloctyl salicylate, 1 to 10. If you bought a sunscreen, maybe by accident, that contained butyloctyl salicylate, how much would you feel like returning it for a full refund?
I'd want to return it. I think this is one where people are getting completely scammed because you go to buy a mineral sunscreen, but a lot of the mineral sunscreens, which some of us know are safer, like zinc oxide, they sit on top of the skin. They are sneaking butyloctyl salicylate in the formula, but it's not technically a UV filter, but it acts like one. So it acts like octinoxate, which we know is a chemical UV filter that absorbs into the bloodstream. They're all chemically almost identical. So there's the same risk there with butyloctyl salicylate. When brands add it to their formula, it boosts up the SPF number. And they know that consumers go straight for that SPF number. We want a higher number, but it's not exactly what we want to be putting on our skin.
What does it do to us? Why don't we want to put it on our skin?
So it can absorb into the bloodstream and could potentially disrupt your hormones. So hormones control all of our bodily processes. So we don't want to be throwing our hormones off in any way if we can avoid it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So would you say most of the chemicals that are in sunscreen that we don't want there, we don't want it to be in our bloodstream, it's more of a hormone disruptor?
Yes, absolutely. That's the big risk there. There's other risk with chemical sunscreens, like they can degrade into harmful byproducts when exposed to UV light or water, really. So chlorine in the water can cause these byproducts that are harmful. There's also environmental concerns with chemical sunscreens, but the big one in terms of our health is the hormone disruption. There's some that are even called obesogens, and that relates to how they mess with your metabolism. So it's another reason.
Obesogens? Meaning you could gain weight?
Right. So there's this theory that is your makeup and skincare making you fat? Well, there could be a correlation.
Whoa. Oh my gosh. We're going to have to research that. Because I sort of feel like, it's like, oh, the chemicals, it's a hormone disruptor. Why only wear it a little bit? Maybe there's that kind of thought, but this is really serious stuff.
Yeah, really serious stuff. So your weight, the way you metabolize, the way that, for reproductive and development, it can affect fertility. We've got menopausal symptoms that can be worsened by hormone disruptors. You think about young girls that are putting tons of products on their body daily, and they're going through huge developmental changes that can increase their risk of cancers or there's also a link to early puberty with these hormone disruptors. And early puberty brings on all these other risks. So it really runs the gamut in terms of what it could do to your health. And if it's avoidable, we absolutely should avoid it.
Wow. Yeah. I think, back in my day when the average girl, got their period, back to when my daughter and her friends were, and I was like, gosh, they're just so young. They're still babies.
And you're exactly right. That's actually been shown. I think the decrease has been huge. I mean, 10 is more norm. So it's several years younger than it was, I think, 50 years ago.
Okay. And the theory is their hormones are being disrupted, and it could be because of all these things we're putting on our body that should not be absorbing into our bloodstream.
Yes, multiple factors, and products are definitely considered one of them.
When a sunscreen bottle says 100% mineral on the front, what does that claim actually guarantee about what's inside?
Unfortunately, that mineral claim can be misleading. So what brands tend to do is they market what they think the consumer wants. And with the trend of clean and all the sunscreen information that's being put out there, a lot of consumers have caught on to the fact that mineral could be better, whether it meaning it's less irritating or a lot of consumers know that it's quite a bit safer because that study came out from the FDA that chemical sunscreens absorb. So a lot of people know they want mineral. So brands are going to say, we're going to do a mineral sunscreen with the active ingredient only being a mineral sunscreen filter. But then they get pulled in the other direction. We need to give a high SPF. And the chemical manufacturers say, oh, well, we have an ingredient. It's not a sunscreen ingredient, but you can use it and you're going to get a higher SPF number. And that ingredient is butyloctyl salicylate. It's a hidden chemical filter, really. It's very similar to octinoxate. That is a chemical UV filter that is put in the active section, but this one goes under the radar and it's put in the inactive ingredients, but it acts like a chemical UV filter. So you want to make sure you're checking the full list for that ingredient as well, even if it says mineral.
Okay. And that ingredient bumps up the SPF, which may or may not even be a good thing beyond you shared with us. Can you
SPF
just enlighten
30.
us?
Yeah, so SPF 30 is really what you want to look for. Anything above SPF 30, they're having to add chemical UV filters. Do something to get that number up, because there's a limit to the amount of individual sunscreen ingredients you can add. So I'll just give the safe one for example. So for zinc oxide, the maximum percentage of the formula is 25%. Okay. If you put 25% zinc oxide, you might get 2%, you might get 2 SPF for every percentage of zinc oxide. So let's say you've got 25% zinc oxide, you might have an SPF 50, right? You might. That's on a good, but you're probably going to get a little bit less. But if you want to go above that, they're going to have to add in other chemical UV filters to get it above 50 in that scenario. And that's actually not even the best example to use, because most of them are not going to use 25%. They're going to use like 15 and get you to 30. Okay. But if you're going for above what the zinc oxide can give you, you have to add chemical UV filters. And those are only going to protect first, they're only going to protect from UVB rays. And then also they're chemical UV filters, and they're going to absorb into your bloodstream, which is what you don't want. And anything above 30 is a very small additional protection from the sun. You still need to reapply. A lot of people are not going to reapply if they're using a really high SPF because they think they have the protection, and it's just misleading.
So really, you might not want to look at the SPF. You'd want to look at the percent of zinc.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
Fascinating, because that SPF is that big marketing number, 80, 90. Oh, wow, I'm going to be
Right.
really protected, is the feeling that I've had for years.
Absolutely. And I think it really has steered people in the wrong direction in some cases.
Oh, totally. I've been steered in the wrong direction. This is just enlightening. And at my age, this is so sad, but I'm happy I'm learning and bringing this to our community. How much does the ingredient fragrance make you feel like plugging your nose?
Oh, it makes me cringe to see fragrance. It's really upsetting because it's just a way that consumers are left in the dark. Fragrance is representative of many, many chemicals. So we don't know what's in there. So my whole thing is transparency is the number one thing. How can we make a decision about whether or not we want to use something on our body if we don't know what it is? So I am educating people what these ingredients mean. But when it comes to fragrance, it's a black box. We don't know what it is. But what we do know, there's been tons of study on fragrance. It's a top allergen, and it contains ingredients that mess with our hormones. That is proven, and they're hidden from us legally. So it's a total scam. And I would say if a product has fragrance on the ingredient label, that means they're hiding stuff from you. You can ask the brand what ingredients make up the fragrance, all of them. And if they won't tell you, that tells you everything you need to know.
Hmm. Wow. No, you remind me. I think I was desperate for a deodorant once, and I always use very like organic, clean, I think. And I just broke out in hives. My lips
Oh,
were swollen. It was not a good thing. What is there a legal list that the FDA has? Like, here's all the ingredients that can be in fragrance.
so that's a great point. There is not. So there's no restrictions there. But what's interesting is in Europe, brands are required, so they don't have to tell you everything in the fragrance, but they have to tell you if there's a fragrance allergen. They have a list of fragrance allergens, and actually that list is getting longer. So they have to say what those allergens are. The US has proposed doing something similar. It hasn't gone into effect yet. So you might see fragrance, and then after the fragrance, you'll see these other ingredients like limonene, linalool, which actually these can be components of essential oils, but because so many people have allergic reactions to them, they need to know if they're in there. Some people might be fine with them, and some people might have a reaction to it. So it's one of those situations where some people are sensitive and some people aren't, and you just kind of have to know where you fall. Like some people can't use lavender, some people can, even though it's natural, but it's really the synthetic ingredients that are going to increase your risk over the long term for like hormone disruption. Those are the big ones that these synthetic fragrance compounds that are coming out. They haven't been tested. They're just like put on the market. And then if one of them is found to be harmful, like musk, they just replace it with another one. So fragrances is really kind of a nasty a business, and it's a whole industry. So there's fragrance houses. There's a few fragrance houses that make all the fragrance, not even for perfumes, but all the fragrance that goes into all the products. I mean, even our trash bags are fragranced. Everything is fragranced. So we're just inundated with it.
Oh my gosh. And okay, so My perception has been it's a beautiful world. It's like an
Yeah.
essential oil, like you say. I feel like, oh, it's harmless.
Right, right. And essential oils, there are some perfumes, there's brands that have come out in the last couple of years that derive their fragrance like the old school way. So they use, pieces of essential oils and they do it over a long period of time and make these beautiful scents. And I think that if you want to wear a fragrance, that is the way to go because these natural ingredients are time tested. They're not the newest chemical that was made in a lab that might be similar to something that we already know is harmful. I think that those are the way to go. And then you can pick and choose. And those companies are completely transparent. They're going to list exactly every single ingredient in there. And so you don't get fooled and you can really choose one that's going to suit you well.
Yes, I should go back to that deodorant and find out what was in the fragrance
Yeah, you can
because let's
ask
just
them.
say,
Yeah.
oh,
And figure out what made you break out. And then you can know what to avoid in your other products.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Oh my goodness. So what we've learned from you today is that fragrance it's not necessarily one organic ingredient. It could be many, some of which could cause massive allergic reactions. Why is this allowed, in other countries? I know you talked about the EU and any background on why is this allowed?
Well, that's a great question. We, really in the US particularly, so is very lax when it comes to cosmetics regulation. It was one of those things that was sort of looped in with um, drug regulation, and it kind of all got clumped together. And the main focus was really on keeping drugs safe because they were having these massive accidents and people were getting really harmed by drugs. And so this law came out, and cosmetics got grouped in, but they've never really been scrutinized in the way that keeps us safe completely. It's really up to us as a consumer. So the ingredients don't have to be proven safe before they're put on the shelf. And the onus is on the brand to make sure that their products are safe. I mean, like it is the government gives the brand the responsibility to make sure they're safe. And unfortunately, their priority is profit. So are they always putting our health and safety first? I don't think so. I think there are brands that are doing it, but really it's left up to us to decide if the products meet our standard of safe.
Hmm. Okay, so you are the developer of the app Switch Natural. If we were to scan a sunscreen product that had fragrance in it, would it then deliver, here are all of the all of the ingredients in that fragrance that's in that sunscreen?
No. So what my app would do, it would flag that fragrance is listed, which that tells you right there they're hiding something, right? Because if they list fragrance, that means they're putting a bunch of chemicals in that one spot and they're not. If they disclosed all the fragrance chemicals, then they wouldn't list fragrance, right? But because fragrance is there, we know they're hiding something, and the app has no way of no one has any way of knowing what ingredients make up that fragrance. They're hiding it from all of us. It's considered a trade secret. So I guess fragrance houses have convinced regulators that they need to have this proprietary information or somebody's going to copy. But that's a real cop out because it's actually very easy to copy fragrance. The technology has gotten to where if brands want to knock off a fragrance, it's very easy to do. They have I think it's a machine actually that can figure out what the molecules are and recreate it. So proprietary is a real cop out, in my opinion.
Okay, no, that's fair. So fragrance, just avoid it, to be careful. We don't really need
Yeah.
to know what's in it. They're not going to tell us.
Right. And if it's a brand that you otherwise have used before, or you feel like there's some trustworthiness there, I would say really encourage reaching out. They might come back and say, hey, yes, we do want to disclose all of our ingredients. We haven't updated our website yet, or we're in the process. Here's the list, and that I think that would be an optimal scenario. And maybe you feel then you can observe and see what the ingredients are and decide, okay, I feel comfortable using it. 9 times out of 10, in my experience, because I've reached out to a ton of brands, 9 times out of 10, they say, nope, we can't tell you it's proprietary.
Really?
Mhm.
Amazing, amazing the world we live in. The other thing you told us a bit more about was butyloctyl salicylate, which is a hormone disruptor. And that seems to me something that I wish I had known about that or even had the app Switch Natural back in the day. So I could be really careful about what I'm putting on my body, especially when I was nursing, knowing now that that could be transferred to my young children. I don't want to disrupt their hormones.
Right, absolutely. And I think butyloctyl salicylate is one of the newer ones, and we can't say for certainty what it does. But what we do know is that it's very chemically similar to another chemical sunscreen that we know absorbs into the bloodstream. So we have enough information to know that we probably should avoid it. And it's interesting, if you look at the manufacturers of that ingredient, they market it to brands as an ingredient that boosts SPF protection. So it's very sneaky.
It is sneaky. Okay, let's just talk about what the US allows in terms of chemicals in beauty products versus the EU or other countries.
So the EU is stricter for sure. The EU bans, I think, over 1,500-ish ingredients. The US, I think, bans around 11. The US really doesn't ban a lot in beauty ingredients at all. One that comes up a lot is talc. This one really is driven home for me because it's one of the first ingredients that I became aware of when I was pregnant and I was trying to come up with products that I would use and buy for my babies. I have twins. And I was finding information. So this was back in 2014. There were articles saying that talc could be contaminated with asbestos. And then it was in every single baby powder at the time. Years later, it has been pulled from Johnson & Johnson baby powder because they've had tens of thousands of lawsuits. So finally, they just said, fine. They still haven't admitted that there's asbestos, even though the FDA found asbestos in some of their products. FDA also found asbestos in talc-based makeup. Tons of brands have been litigated over having asbestos found in their talc makeup. So it's a big problem. And it's still in products on the shelf and powders, foundations, all kinds of things. And the beauty industry just sort of turns a blind eye to it. Well, the EU has taken a stronger stance in this particular example, when we're talking about the EU versus the US, and they're saying, okay, no, talc itself is problematic and is a presumed carcinogen. So they're taking a stronger stance there, which I think is better. We also talked about fragrance. So the EU requires brands to list fragrance allergens. The US doesn't. The US has hinted that they're going in that direction. It hasn't happened yet. We'll see if it does. So both countries are still hiding ingredients, but the EU is at least saying, okay, you need to put the allergens there so that something like what happened to you doesn't happen to people where they're using a product and they know they're allergic to something, but don't know that it's in the product and then have a reaction. So
this is shocking. The EU has 1,500 plus chemicals not allowed to protect its citizens in cosmetic ingredients. And the US has, say that number again?
11.
11. I'm just shocked. Well, and I'm so glad that you talked about talc because in my day, we grew up thinking talc was a great thing. It was in your powder and everything. And so when I think I was in a store later in my life and someone said, well, it's got talc in it. You want to avoid that. And I was like, what are you talking about? I've been using that my whole life. Right? So even now, I didn't even know until now. I never researched it because I was almost within a state of disbelief. I thought she's got her data wrong.
Right. It is so, because it's so widely used. I mean, it's put on babies some people have used it their entire life. It's been linked to ovarian cancer. It's definitely, it causes mesothelioma when it has asbestos in it. So people that use it in their underwear, there's a link. They have actually found it in tumors, ovarian tumors and cysts.
Oh my gosh. I haven't used it for years just because I stopped using it. But yeah, my mom taught me to, use baby powder on all of your parts of your body, which has talc in it. Okay. I'm glad that's disappearing. Is that on the 11 list?
That is not. No. So that was an example I gave that the EU is starting to take a stronger stance against, and the US is still not. And I mean, these lawsuits, there are a lot of lawsuits, high numbers.
Amazing. I was unaware, completely unaware. It's like you can only absorb so much. And thank you for spending your life doing this.
Absolutely. There's so much information out there. I want to make it easier for people because I feel like with products, this is the easy thing to do. This isn't like trying to develop an entire new diet that you hate all the food. Like there's good products out there now, which is so cool. Like the truly clean products out there work so well that it's why are we even using the other stuff? And I think if people knew that, they would gravitate towards the better stuff and then brands would be incentivized to make the better stuff. So I really just think that education is kind of the way to do this. And the regulations may catch up in certain instances, but there's such a lag between when we know something could be risky, but and then from the time that it gets pulled from the shelf, there's so much time. And then many times it's not going to get pulled from the shelf. So the best thing we can do is share information, tell each other about the good products that work. And that has really been my mission from the beginning. You know, I started with a blog. When I started researching all this stuff when I was pregnant back in 2014, I just started stowing this away. I was like, I've got to share this at some point. And then when my kids were a little bit older, I'm like, okay, I'm going to start a blog and just start sharing this because people need to know. I know if I have these questions, other people have these questions. And I think the more we can talk about it, the better off the whole industry will move and be.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So I have your app and the way I've been using it is actually typing in like butylactosalicylate and then getting the
really?
data.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
love it.
I love that.
Yeah, but I have to get it now so I can take the screen cap of the ingredients and it'll give me everything. Question, does the app then offer alternatives?
Yes. So that is something that was very important to me from the beginning. Like the two things, like the questions that I was getting that I could not respond fast enough to people were, is this product that I'm about to buy, does it have harmful ingredients? And if it does, what do I buy? So I knew I wanted to answer those two questions. So there's a shop section, and what it is just links to products that I vetted and either have been recommended to me in my community that I've scanned. So all of them have been scanned to make sure they don't have harmful ingredients. They're personal favorites of mine, personal favorites of people in my community, so that if you're just like, I don't know what to buy, you can type in shampoo and it'll give you some options. So just to make it easy. And there's I've consistently added since I started the app, and I think now I have over 4,000 products in there. So it's a pretty good place to look.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. So Switch Natural, your app, you can type in the ingredient and find out if all the details. Is it a hormone disruptor? What's good? What's bad about it? You can scan the ingredients and get all of that detail for every ingredient on a product. And then you can get alternatives. Thank you so much for developing this app. Is there anything else that the app does that's wonderful that we should know about?
Absolutely. So I love that you use the lookup, and that's so interesting to me because that was actually a feature that was requested and I added on. It wasn't in the original version that I put out. It came out within a year later, I think. But I love that people are just craving and want to be able to look stuff up. So it's like a toxin library, basically. So anything that's risky, if you type it in, it pulls up, and it pulled, and the same way that it pulls up in the way that you're looking, when you snapshot an ingredient list, whether it's on your phone, on your computer, or in store, in your home, you can click on the ingredient that it flags and it'll give you it'll give you the description and then the links that you can click over to read about it. And so I wanted it to be honestly super simple. I want this to be easy to use and fast. Nobody wants, it's just so overwhelming. Like you said, there's so much information. I just want to get to the answer. What's the risk here? And then I want to know how you got to that conclusion. What else can I buy? So I kept it very simple and just streamlined, as few clicks as possible. I want people to be able to get to the answer because the original issue was that I couldn't get back to people fast enough before they were in the checkout line. So it's been really cool to see how it's changed people's way of shopping and switched so many products in a short amount of time.
It's lovely. I would go so much faster standing in that sunscreen line. Just nope versus I can barely read that.
Read it. I know.
Yeah, Switch Natural is radically simple. I would recommend it to anyone if you're really concerned about the ingredients that are in your cosmetics and other things that you're putting on your body or consuming. And we should be concerned.
Yeah, thank you so much. It means a lot. I know how thoughtful you are about what you're doing and passionate about education. It means a lot that you recommend the app.
1 to 10. How much do you feel like stockpiling sunscreens with the ingredient zinc oxide?
10. I love zinc oxide. I recommend it all the time. I think it is the number one sunscreen we should all be using. It's the gold standard. It's the safest. It's the ingredient that all countries agree are safe. There's a lot of disagreement about what percentage of what chemical can be used where on the face, on the body in various countries across the world. But the one thing they all agree on is that zinc oxide is safe and effective. It protects against UVA and UVB rays.
And is there a certain amount of zinc oxide we should be looking for?
So anywhere, a lot of times you'll see anywhere from 9 or 10%, all the way up to 25%. 25% is technically the cap. That's a pretty hefty zinc oxide sunscreen. It's going to give you a lot of protection, like I said, against UVA and UVB. I still think that when you have that high SPF, it's probably going to be thicker, but you still want to reapply and just use sensible sunscreen protection.
Okay, so I bought, it looked like a deodorant for my daughter's face the other day. And then when I went back to get one for me, I looked on the back because it said zinc. I was so excited. I had just talked to Mrs. Sunscreen from Daily Shade, and it said there was 1.5% zinc in there. So is that not really doing
wow. Interesting. Yeah. Yes. So you do want to be aware if the percentage is really low, you're not going to get a ton of protection. So that's definitely something to be aware of. And I would say too, kind of as a rule of thumb, you're going to get about 1.5% SPF protection for every 1% of zinc oxide. So for example, if you have a 10% zinc oxide formula, it should give you a reliable at least SPF 20. So you want to just double that percentage. And that's kind of just a litmus test to make sure you're getting a good amount.
Okay. And the highest SPF is a number where you don't really need to go any higher. It's not really doing you much good. What is that number?
SPF 50, above SPF 50, you're not getting much. I mean, really, I recommend SPF 30. You'll see some zinc oxide sunscreens that are formulated really well that have maybe 15% zinc oxide. They're going to give you SPF 30 more. And I think that's a nice sweet spot of not being too thick and chalky, but also giving you good protection. SPF 30 is really what you need. You want to reapply it. I think you get like a very incremental sun protection from anything above a 30.
So if you're at 15% zinc oxide, you're pretty protected.
Yes, for sure.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Titanium dioxide, scale of 1 to 10. How much do you trust titanium dioxide to protect your family from the sun's damaging rays?
Ooh, this one really puts me on the spot. So if I were at a store and I forgot to bring my zinc oxide sunscreen and I was scanning all the ones in the store and the safest one I could find had zinc oxide and titanium dioxide, but no other harmful ingredients, I would use that instead of going with nothing. And I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but my issue with zinc oxide, my issue with titanium dioxide, it is a safer sunscreen ingredient because it's mineral. It's not going to absorb into the bloodstream like a chemical sunscreen would. However, it's important to know that titanium dioxide, when used as a sunscreen ingredient, it's often in the nano form. And we know that nanoparticles, which are these teeny tiny particles, can get into our cells and potentially wreak havoc. So that being said, titanium dioxide is generally considered safe, but it's just worth knowing that it's likely in the nano form. And I generally recommend against nanoparticles in general, nano ingredients. So my number one ingredient is zinc oxide, but if I were stuck and I could only use one that had zinc and titanium, I would use that rather than nothing.
Okay, so titanium dioxide, because it comes in a nano form, it can penetrate the skin. We just don't know what that does. Zinc oxide is not nano, and therefore it sits on top and reflects the sun.
Zinc oxide can come in multiple forms. It can come in nano or non-nano, but a lot of times you will see non-nano zinc oxide in sunscreens, and they will specify that it's non-nano because they know that there is some skepticism with nanoparticles. But usually when you see titanium, it's typically nano form. This is another wrinkle to the titanium dioxide story, is that titanium dioxide is used in a lot of makeup because it gives opacity. So it's a great makeup ingredient in foundation and things like that. If colored cosmetics, basically. The colored cosmetics titanium dioxide is typically not nano. is typically non-nano. So the one that's used in sunscreen as an active ingredient is typically nano. The one that's used as a colorant in makeup is typically non-nano. So it's just a small distinction. Now, some sunscreens will use non-nano. It's very rare that I see non-nano titanium dioxide, but it can be there.
Okay, great. Bottom line is, we want mineral, not chemical sunscreen. And I don't think chemical, I've ever seen that on the front of a bottle, but I really never understood mineral.
Right.
Mineral is zinc and mineral is titanium dioxide. But we might want to lean more into zinc because, especially the non-nano, because we just don't want that absorbing into our insides.
Yes, zinc oxide's gold standard. Non-nano zinc oxide, that's the one you want.
Perfect. Andrea, thank you. Thank you and Switch Natural, the app that you developed that allows us to now scan ingredients and we can learn and make the right decisions for ourselves about whether or not we want to have toxic chemicals in our body or other ingredients that just, studies have shown they might not be good for us. We appreciate you so much. And thank you for your time with our Beauty Seek community.
Thank you for having me and for all of that you share.
Beauty Seekers, subscribe to Beauty Seek today for clear, evidence-based answers on the treatments and the products you might be using daily, so you always know the right questions to ask and you never buy blind again.